Hello everyone, Curious Corduroy here, and a very interesting video popped up on my recommended feed over on YouTube a few days ago, and it's from the folks over at Watch Mojo. Apparently, they have a gaming channel called MojoPlays, and they uploaded a video titled 10 Theories about Final Fantasy VII Part 3. Naturally, that's going to catch people's attention, including mine. But I'm kind of curious to see what they talk about in this video because here on the channel, the whole entire Final Fantasy community, after we played Rebirth, we've been discussing crazy theories nonstop. Some that are kind of like bottom of the barrel, not super crazy, and then some are like corkboard red string kind of theories that we're all losing our minds over. Sephiroth being post-Advent children, traveling back in time, that kind of stuff. So I'm kind of curious to see what they put in here to see, like, is this more of like a general viewer kind of idea of what these theories are, or are they going to dive deep into like the hardcore stuff? So I'm kind of excited to check it out. So if any of that sounds cool, you can click the like button and subscribe, and let's get started. I'm wearing my, I don't know if this is going to show up on camera, my FF7 Rebirth t-shirt. I love this thing. Very comfortable. Fits very well. And I just realized I forgot my glasses, but that's okay. I need my ears.
Take care.
Starting off with the ending.
You gonna be okay getting back?
Yeah.
Welcome to MojoPlays, and I finally just got around to finishing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, so now I'm super keen to talk about what we can expect from here. These are 10 theories about Final Fantasy VII Part 3. Some of these theories make sense, some of these theories are just good fun, and some of these theories are so crackpotty that it almost makes sense again. Let's go. Before we continue, we publish content all week long. Advent Children.
Ooh, okay. Starting off with AC.
Let that righteous anger guide you.
For those who don't know, there is a Final Fantasy VII movie titled Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, which follows Cloud, Tifa, and a handful of new characters in a sequel story to the original game. Without giving away too much about the plot, there are events like the mysterious illness.
Also, we're going to talk about spoilers in this video. Whether they do or not, we're talking spoilers, so you've been warned.
Of geostigma that take place throughout the film that are direct results of the ending of the game and the way Sephiroth was killed. That could be worth hinting at throughout the third entry, or even exploring in post-game content. We may even see the creation of, or birth for lack of a better word, of Kadaj, Loz, and Yazoo, following the death of Sephiroth.
Even after everything we've done to it, it's still going strong.
Tifa.
So, yeah, I mean, we've talked about Advent Children being related to this remake trilogy a ton in recent videos, especially. I made that graph of how we had like the OG timeline of FF7, well, technically before Crisis Core, then FF7, and then Advent Children, then Dirge, and then I had the picture of Sephiroth because post-Advent Children Sephiroth somehow found a way to either go back in time or in the live stream jump to a different world. I sound like a maniac. And then go to the beginning of time directly after Crisis Core and before Crisis. It's early in the morning when I'm recording this, sorry. And he's now changing things. So he's equipped with a ton of knowledge. He's manipulating Cloud a little differently. He's seemingly knows a lot. So this is insinuating that Advent Children would still happen. I know Kitase said recently that if you look at the timeline of the remake trilogy, you would assume that Advent Children still happens. But again, we don't know how any of this stuff is going to wrap up. I don't know if Sephiroth wants to get to Advent Children because what happens in Advent Children, he's already dead. He has to be brought back. So I think he wants to avoid that. But the fact that they're thinking that Kadaj and crew could maybe show back up is kind of interesting because we technically did fight them at the end of 7 Remake. Those whispers were clearly influenced by Kadaj and crew. So that one's not too crazy. Advent Children is alive and well in this remake trilogy.
And the live stream.
Yeet. I'm eating way too much. My waifu.
One of Tifa's most significant character developments in Rebirth occurs when Cloud unexpectedly sends her into the live stream. We say unexpectedly because that's not supposed to happen yet. During this sequence, she directly connects with the planet through the two weapons, making this one of the more substantial deviations from the OG story, setting up later moments to hopefully flesh them out and make them less obscure. Simply put, I believe Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 will explore this aspect of Tifa's journey much further. In Rebirth, her newfound knowledge never fully comes into play, which seemingly sets the stage for Tifa to have a much larger role in relation to the planet and the Lifestream in the next installment, through genuine connection, not a trip and a fall. If that was too vague to understand, you should play the original because that was a funny gag. A new
Yeah, so that one, again, that's not super new. We've talked about this. Tifa falling into the live stream, she now has that experience that she's going to need to help Cloud in part 3 when she's got to help him put his mind back together. So she's been there now. She knows what it looks like. She's navigated it technically through a weapon, but if I remember correctly, the way the live stream works is the moment you're in that live stream, you're hit with like a bunch of knowledge. So Tifa might have information just sitting in her brain that she hasn't unlocked quite yet, but she's going to use that for sure in part 3 to help Cloud. And I think that's why they did this here, to give us a preview of what it's going to look like, but also to let us know like, hey, Sephiroth is also in the live stream. Again, Advent Children stuff. So not too crazy there.
Final boss.
A new final boss. Okay. What they got?
Let me say this entry with an important preface. Players will likely still face Sephiroth as the final boss of Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3, but let's just explore the possibility that something different could happen. It's highly unlikely that Sephiroth will simply vanish before the final showdown or suddenly have a change of heart. However, given the overarching themes of defying fate and altering history, there's clearly something bigger at play. Who else might we fight? Some force is manipulating the timeline, ensuring that Final Fantasy VII's key events unfold as they always have. This raises the possibility that the final boss of Remake Part 3 could be the true mastermind behind the Whispers, or even a physical embodiment of fate itself. If Sephiroth's death created Kadaj, Loz, and Yazoo, who knows what else it created? Maybe we'll fight Sephiroths from multiple timelines, who knows? Just expect the unexpected. Zack?
Wasn't expecting it to get flashbanged in the morning. But yeah, no, I fully believe Sephiroth is the mastermind behind all of this. Jenova's got a part to play, of course, but we've talked about how like maybe Sephiroth wants to break free of Jenova. Maybe he has found a way to like get through that influence and he's trying to figure out, okay, maybe she's holding me back, or maybe I can absorb her power somehow. There's the Sephiroth on the edge of creation that we're all still so confused about. Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? Is he, to use a wrestling term, a tweener, somewhere in between? We don't know what his goal is, but I would fully expect a safer Sephiroth battle in the final game. Jenova, of course, we're going to have to fight more Genovas. The Whispers we've already technically fought. We've already fought the, what was it called? The Harbinger of Fate, the big Kingdom Hearts looking dude at the end of 7 Remake. So I don't know if they would go back to that. I feel like it all just kind of comes back to Sephiroth. That is going to be who our final boss is. Safer Sephiroth, maybe a different form, because I was full on expecting to fight Bizarro Sephiroth in part 3, but we got that in Rebirth instead with Sephiroth Reborn. So there might be some other new forms they bust out before Safer Sephiroth or after Safer Sephiroth. Maybe, like this video says, Sephiroth somehow finds a way to pull actual Kadajin crew, not just like their whisper spirits, into play to battle us. There's a lot that could go on. It's really, really cool, but I think it all still comes back to Sephiroth.
Will return.
The expressway.
Yep.
Search and rescue operations are already in progress.
We still have one
To your right.
ex-soldier armed with a buster sword. Highly dangerous.
I repeat, the fugitive is an ex-soldier armed with a buster sword.
One of the biggest changes to the original story has been the involvement of Zack, and particularly the unexpected merging of our timelines Cloud and this alternate timeline Zack. I'd be surprised if this version of Zack didn't make a return in the third entry of the remake. His final line, who's to say, as in their world, can't unite again, all but set it up, and it would be strange for Square Enix to leave Zack's story hanging just as he's clinging to the possibility of reuniting with his friends. So I say that we can safely expect him to play a role when Cloud and the others set out to defeat Sephiroth and save the world. And maybe we can get out of this experience with everyone's lives intact in one form or another.
It all felt way too real.
Just as worlds unite, so too do they part. But who's to say they can't unite again?
Yeah, Zack will be back. It's just how we don't know. Again, there's the theory that the world that Zack is in that we just saw might potentially be the world our main party is in. So it might be up to him to retrace the steps of our party, put together his own party to try and catch up to Tifa and crew at the Northern Crater. I also had this idea of what if you get to the Northern Crater and Cloud goes full on sicko puppet mode for Sephiroth and he becomes a boss battle and you gotta fight Cloud at the Northern Crater and knock him out. Maybe Zack is there to help you guys out. He's gonna have a role to play for sure. And again, his combat, they fleshed out his combat so much. And you're telling me they just did that for Rebirth? No, he's gonna have a bigger part to play. There was that video that came out a couple of weeks ago where it showed that Zack is actually capable of using summons. So I would expect if he can use a summon and they made that animation and had the voice line, they probably would want to use that in part 3. So that signals to me that he's going to have bigger fights that would require the use of a summon. Maybe he somehow goes into the Lifestream works with Aerith. We don't know, but he will be back for sure.
Game content.
Yes.
It's Avalanche's fault. We're gonna have
I tell you.
Everyone, please. One at a time.
One major way Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 could significantly reshape the original ending is by introducing post-game content. And I don't mean finishing everything before the final boss. I mean post-final boss content.
Is this what I'm thinking of?
Modern RPGs often allow players to continue exploring after the main story concludes. And this is mostly by following the outcome of the final moments of these games. The final chapter of Final Fantasy VII Part 3 could unlock an epilogue, perhaps focusing on the aftermath of Midgar's destruction and beyond. This might include the city's reconstruction, the consequences of Sephiroth's defeat, and the long-term impact on our party. Basically, I just want to see if Barrett finally goes home to look after his goddamn daughter.
Hey now, he's a dad. Yeah, so of course, at the end of the OG 7 remake, Midgard does get damaged to a degree because of Holy showing up too late because Sephiroth has that grasp on it, so it's not able to fully do its thing in the way it normally would. But we see that it kind of ends up working with Meteor, like it backfires to a degree and creates those tornadoes. And it's not until Aerith and the Lifestream pop up that they're able to work with Holy properly and push Meteor back. So there will be some damage there. Whether or not they show that in a post-epilogue type of thing, I don't know. But again, I always like the idea of if we do end up going into Advent Children, like we don't somehow avoid it, it'd be kind of cool if that was the epilogue, is Advent Children in playable form now. I think that would be sick. But if we do have like a nice bow on the story and we can wrap it up, Aerith and Zack, I still think should probably stay dead, but that's a very controversial topic apparently. It would be nice to kind of just see like one final epilogue where everyone just kind of gets to relax. Kind of like how we got at the end of Advent Children where you see Cloud riding on the bike around the country. I think that would be pretty cool. Anything to kind of wrap it up, but also just like post-game content in terms of just like super bosses, hidden areas. It would be cool to see them support Part 3 with DLC, whether it's free or paid. I always love the idea of doing like little episodic things like Ever Crisis does. They have these really fun events where the characters just get together and do cool things and have cool conversations, and maybe you could do something like that as a post-game thing for this game, just add super bosses for a brief amount of time. But if this is truly the last like part of the trilogy, and I don't think they're just going to let FF7 go away. It's too popular. But if it is, an epilogue tying all this stuff together would be nice.
Cathartic romance.
So, I heard you and Tifa go way back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also heard she used to have a pretty big crush on you.
That's so.
The romantic subplot in Final Fantasy VII always felt underdeveloped, with the game essentially steering players towards Tifa, even if they'd been pursuing Aerith. Obviously, you take what's available. That's so dark, I'm sorry. The remake, however, has put in much more effort to let players influence the romance. That said, Rebirth didn't exactly deliver a satisfying romantic payoff either. After all the build-up, it felt like players' efforts led to little more than a kiss before the story immediately shifted back to saving the world. Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 needs to provide a truly meaningful and cathartic romantic conclusion, one that feels like a real payoff for the player's choices.
Well, I don't think it's going to be a choices thing unless they change up the Under the Highwind thing, because that's obviously between Cloud and Tifa, unless they decide, hey, you can put Barret there if you want. I don't think they would do that. I think they're still going to stay true to that part. I'm not going to go too far into this stuff because the shippers are nuts and they freak out over the littlest thing. But all I'm saying is I don't know if they would do like a choices thing in the 3. Like, I think it's going to be Cloud and Tifa.
We actually matter. The original Final Fantasy VII ending, while emotionally powerful, is a little dissatisfying if you look into the details. The planet's survival has almost nothing to do with our efforts. It's pretty much inevitable, which undercuts our journey. We don't have time to get into it, but the planet basically saves itself. So if the asteroid was never going to destroy the...
Actually, it's Aerith. Again, she comes up from the Lifestream. She bolsters the planet essentially with that Lifestream power and is able to back up Holy to repel Meteor from destroying the entire planet. So it's not in vain. It's not for nothing. Sephiroth just again held that hold on Holy, if I remember correctly, because it was caged up. So it couldn't just get out there and do its thing right away like it normally would have. It was too late, but it needed that help from Aerith and the planet itself to repel it.
The world. Did our actions even matter?
Yes.
Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 has a chance to change this by making the team's efforts truly decisive in stopping Sephiroth. I don't know how, but just do it, Square Enix. Come on, do it.
I think they will. I think we will beat Sephiroth. Again, if we avoid Advent Children and this is the
Rufus
end,
Shinra
you're going
is
to beat him.
Big baddie.
Rufus. He is sharp. Wasn't Rufus designed by the guy who created Ferrari, the car company? I think he was. Which explains the like super extravagant look. He's got a lot of belts. So clearly he took some inspiration from Tetsuya Nomura.
Rufus takes a notable departure from the original Final Fantasy VII in Rebirth, particularly with Glenn haunting him like a spooky ghost. With Shinra's war against Wutai set to play a major role in the next installment, it's safe to assume Rufus will be heavily involved in this conflict. He's struggling to get out from under his father's shadow and stands as Cloud's second biggest antagonist. The fleshing out of the story and characters, as well as Rufus showing up in his own cutscenes and moments made to explore his story, makes it fairly assured that his villain role will have a much bigger place than in the original.
We must look instead to the promise of tomorrow, for today is a new day, and the first of a long, arduous journey, which we must take together.
Everyone gets their...
What they do with Rufus is a little questionable because, again, my details on the original are fuzzy, but Rufus was the one that was secretly funding Avalanche, correct? So he was actively working against his dad to eventually like oust him and then take over. But then in the original, Rufus and Shinra end up kind of doing a bit of a turn from being full-on bad guys to like, okay, like, yeah, this is a serious threat. We got to do something to help. They take out one of the weapons. They're actively trying to stop Sephiroth too. So I don't know if they would turn that on its head in part 3 and make Rufus a just flat out bad guy. I still feel like they want to go down the route they did in the original, but that inclusion of him being haunted by, you know, Sephiroth ghost who is parading around as Glenn definitely adds to his story. We're seeing more stuff between Glenn and Rufus in particular. In Ever Crisis, we know that he is the one responsible for killing Glenn and potentially taking Glenn's dog and turning it into Darkstar, which is brutally just messed up. But I think Rufus is still going to be the way he was in the original. He still has that rivalry with Cloud. I expect maybe another battle with him, just hit that mofo with Braver and stun him. But yeah, I don't know if he's going to ultimately be like the big bad. I still think Shinra and Rufus are going to have their part to play like they did in the original.
Ending. Let's get into it, because this is the entry I feel the most passionate about. Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 should provide definitive endings for all major characters. The original game left their fates ambiguous, offering no real confirmation of what happened to them after the world was saved. While fans could turn to later games or movies for answers, they still have a lot of holes that remain empty. Red 13 had an ending which provided closure. This is the kind of resolution Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 should aim for with everyone else. Bring Aerith.
Oh, that was a short one. Again, that goes back to the whole epilogue thing. I think they will just give everyone an ending. Whether or not they all stay together or head separate ways, everyone I think should have an ending. Again, if this is the last of the original, story for FF7, then yeah, you're going to want to give those characters ending, especially if you, again, avoid Advent Children, or if you do a movie, or if you do what would be really difficult, and that's a brand new FF7 game, because how do you create a story, a villain, an adventure that lives up to the original? It's very hard. I don't know if you can do that. But yeah, everyone should have their epilogues. I want to see what everyone's doing. Is Cloud riding around in the country? Has he forgiven himself? Is Barrett taking care of Marlene? Do they flash forward and show Marlene as a teenager? Is Marlene part of the Cetra? Nobody knows. But yeah, a nice little bow on things would be nice. Uh-oh, bring Aerith back.
Aerith back.
Take care.
You gonna be okay getting back?
And if I said I wasn't?
Aerith's death in the original Final Fantasy VII is one of the most, or possibly the most, emotionally impactful moment in gaming history. However, the remake trilogy has already introduced enough ambiguity around her fate, enough to at least set us up for possible change. Rebirth makes it clear that while Aerith is undeniably dead in the main timeline, she might not be dead everywhere.
Yeah.
The concept of clashing realities, like in the final battle of Part 2, raises the possibility of her crossing over from another timeline. Could she survive? Absolutely. Her potential survival isn't just about fan service, it would allow for deeper character development and a more meaningful exploration of her relationship with Cloud. But also, what a fan service it would be.
Walking city streets with worn cobblestone.
Did you
Hello everyone, Future Corduroy here, and I just want to give you guys a heads up that the next section of the video might be a bit redundant if you've watched my last Ultimania talk video, because we covered this exact same subject in that video. However, the reaction video you're watching currently, I recorded about a month ago before I ever put together that Ultimania video, and I just completely forgot that we covered that exact same subject in this current reaction video. However, I do elaborate a little bit more in this video with a quote from Tetsuya Nomura where he talks about loss and also the fate of a character like Aerith and what he thinks should happen. And full transparency, I almost cut this part of the video out because whenever we talk about the subject of Aerith and Zack and whether or not they should stay dead, people get up in arms. And look, I get it. We're all incredibly passionate. We care about the characters and the story. We have our own thoughts and feelings on how things, should play out or what we would like to see play out. But all I ask is that people...
Whoa, just take it easy, man.
But it is what it is. Now, if you will excuse me, I've got a ham sandwich with my name on it that is calling me, and I'm pretty hungry.
enjoy this?
Oh my goodness, this is such a can of worms. Should Aerith come back? I get why people would want it. It's the same with Zack. I feel like if you're staying true to the original game, which the devs are for the most part, there's new stuff obviously, then yeah, Aerith and Zack should stay dead. I think bringing them back kind of goes against one of the core concepts of the original game and just the story of FF7, and that's life and loss. And we see those characters lose Aerith. We see Cloud lose so many people. That's the thing. Everyone in the cast of FF7 has lost something. They've lost their hometown. They've lost a body part. They've lost their identity. They've lost a dream. Part of their life. Everyone has lost something, and we see those characters navigate how they, navigate that loss essentially. Barrett dying in Myrna, Cloud losing his mom, and him and Tifa losing both of their parents and losing Nibelheim, and then coming back and saying like, wait, it's back, they rebuilt it. Sid not having his dream of going to space, although that does kind of change a little bit in later in the game. But yeah, like part of that game is lost. We lose Aerith with Zack, and that's kind of how maybe it should be. I know that's going to upset some people, but it's just, I don't know. I feel like bringing them back and letting them stay alive goes against that core aspect of what Sakaguchi was going for in the original FF7. Because one of the core things that led to him talking about life and loss, I believe, was the death of his mother. And that was like one of the big motivating factors for that story in terms of like the Gaia theory of dying and going back to the planet. But I would also like to point to an interview with Tetsuya Nomura that he did with Game Informer a few years ago in the lead up to Rebirth, where he talks about the idea of life and how that was a core theme of the original FF7. And he also elaborates on the fate of Aerith and how he feels about her and what he thinks should happen to her in this remake trilogy. So Nomura would say, beginning with the original FF7, when we had started working on it, it was already decided from the get-go that life would be the central theme surrounding 7. I knew that we had to depict life and death within this title. Prior to Final Fantasy VII, there had been other titles where characters have experienced tragedy, but many of them have come back or been revived in some way. But I believe that loss is something that happens unexpectedly, and it's not something so dramatic or drawn out, but is something in which a person that you have just conversed with is suddenly gone and never to come back. I believe that the person who dies should not return in this title, and that is what we did with the original. Now that last line might be a bit confusing, but the way that I interpret it, and maybe my interpretation is wrong, but I feel like he's saying Aerith should not come back, speaking specifically on Rebirth and the remake trilogy. And I feel like that just kind of hammers that point home of oftentimes in media we have characters that die, but you don't really feel anything because you know they're going to come back. And one of the biggest aspects of the original FF7 is the death of Aerith. She is a catalyst for so many story points in that game. And I feel it's the same in the remake trilogy. And granted, we don't see her death properly play out. I fully believe that's something that will happen in part 3. But the way that Nomura talks about death and loss, and granted we all experience loss differently, but I feel like the way Nomura describes it is how a lot of us do experience it, whether it's the loss of a person or a pet or what have you. One moment they're there and then the next they're gone. It's not something that's always drawn out and we can't bring them back, as much as it sucks. So even Nomura is like, yeah, I don't believe that she should return. And again, life, loss, those are still very strong core themes in the remake trilogy. Aerith really hammers that home in the Temple of the Ancients. And personally, I think that's why I love this remake trilogy so much, is that everyone has different thoughts and feelings on what they would like to happen or what's already played out. Katase wants a happy ending. Nomura doesn't want Aerith to come back. I don't know what Kazushige Nojima feels, but we do know that the devs want the ending to be more moving, and it can be moving while also being a bit bittersweet. And they already know what's going to happen, and this is something they've been planning for a very, very long time. And if I could use one word to describe this entire remake trilogy, it would be meticulous. This is something they've been planning for a very, very long time. You can go back to interviews with Nomura on the Advent Children DVD, where he's talking about how this feels like it's just the beginning of something bigger for Final Fantasy VII, and I fully believe he was alluding to the remake project. And this is backed up further by Katase, who said that in the early 2010s, he approached Kazushige Nojima, the scenario writer, and said, "It looks like we're gonna do this remake trilogy. Can you start writing stuff now?" And if you go back to that first reveal trailer of 7 Remake, the person narrating that trailer is Gina Tak. And the things that he's talking about have so many different levels to them. It's not just addressing the fans, it's addressing the characters, the stories, the scenarios. So they've been planning this stuff out for a very, very long time. And that's really just a long tangent in a different way for me to say that I really still feel like life and loss are still big core concepts of the remake trilogy, and I don't think she's coming back. I believe they should stay dead. It's sad, it's bittersweet, but that's kind of how it's supposed to be. Now, in regards to Aerith being alive in another world, I fully believe that now. I got a video coming out sometime in the future. It's a community comments video where we talk about that theory, and my eyes have been opened. Because before I was very much like, no, every Aerith we're seeing is potentially Genova manipulation Aerith messing with Cloud. I still think that's happening. I still think that Aerith we see in the Forgotten Capital is not so nice Aerith. That's Genova Aerith, Jareth, if you will. But I think that the Aerith we see in the airfield is the real Aerith from a different world. And long story short, to kind of explain that, I think the theory was something along the lines of Cloud basically being stuck in between two worlds. The main world that we're in, where Aerith dies, and then another world where she still survives. And that's the Aerith that we're seeing in the last section of the game, as she's basically two different Aeriths at one time. Corkboard red string. I go further in depth in that community comments video, which will get uploaded eventually. But there's the Aerith from the other world that survived. We see her. Her clothing interacts with the wind from the high wind. And then there's the Aerith that's walking around checking on people. Her clothing does not react to any of the wind or the weather. And she's basically the one that died. And she's now checking on everyone. So in a way, she kind of is still alive. We don't know what's going to happen to that Aerith from another world. Maybe she decides to sacrifice herself. Maybe her and Zack do survive, but they're in a different world and it's not our Aerith and Zack. So it's a very touchy subject for a lot of people, but I feel like they kind of have to stay dead. That's just kind of true to the story, and it would feel kind of weird, I think, if they went back on that. I think it would upset a lot of people too. That was the video. That was kind of interesting. I did see another one pop up I kind of want to take a look at very briefly. Where did it go? Okay, I found the video. I'm not going to watch the whole thing. I kind of just want to see what their list is of like apparently the 10 hardest boss fights in Rebirth. Dine on regular mode, Dine was fine. On hard mode, I struggled. He whooped my butt. But I was playing very sloppily, so that's kind of on me. Terror of the Deep, I don't think that's too hard. It's mostly just avoiding those bubbles that encapsulate the player. Gina Talk. When I first fought him on hard, I wasn't really paying attention. I was like, I need to capture footage for the channel, and I got whooped. But when I came back and I had like my materia and everything figured out, it wasn't too bad. And it's actually kind of a fun fight when you know what you're doing. Tonberry King, probably really difficult on hard mode. Specimen, super easy on hard mode, didn't struggle there. Looks like they've got Scarlet there. Yeah, she whooped my butt. Bahamut, most replayed is, Vincent. Oh, Vincent's going to be such a nightmare on hard mode. He's going to toss me around the room. Rufus is difficult, but if you stagger him, it's not too bad. Darkstar getting involved makes things a little confusing. Gilgamesh, that was a pretty crazy battle. I feel like I wasn't fighting Gilgamesh properly on dynamic mode. I got to figure that one out. He's probably going to be terrifying on hard mode. And then Sephiroth. Sephiroth is no joke, whether you're on dynamic mode and probably hard mode, and then there's the VR simulator Sephiroth that I'm going to try and get to. Yeah, that's not going to be easy. But the thing I appreciate about hard mode is that it does force you to really focus on your equipment and your materia. And for the love of God, in part 3, can we get some materia loadouts? When you have certain, materia that you need to use or want to use, you have to start swapping it from character to character. And then once you finish the fight, it's like, now I have to remember, okay, what character had what materia? I got to put it back on everyone properly. So if we could just have specific loadouts for materia, maybe even equipment, that would be really, really nice. But that is the video. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments down below of the MojoPlays 10 theories video. Nothing too crazy, nothing like that would have me committed, but it was still pretty interesting. Some interesting stuff to pull there for sure. But with that being said, I'm Curious Corduroy. I will see you guys in the next video. Please remember to always be excellent to one another.